Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to the round 4 of the FIDE World Championship match between Nepomniachtchi and Liren. Before the round 4, Nepo had I think a great situation. He won the game 2, all the other games ended in a draw, which meant it was of course a +1 situation for Nepomniachtchi. But we have to say, Nepo played I think so far great chess, but we have to also say Liren didn't play his best chess so far. I think we know a better Ding. Ding played many times great opening, great theoretical improvements, in particular sidelines. He played great middle game strategies. He found always cool tactical elements. So we haven't seen really the best Ding, but in the round 4, I guarantee you this was now another Ding Liren that we'll see now in this beautiful game. Be prepared, put your seatbelt on. It was an incredible game in the round 4 of the FIDE World Championship match. So Ding with the white pieces opened with the move c4. We have knight to f6 by Nepomniachtchi, knight to c3 after e5. We have the reversed cylinder setup, knight to f3, knight to c6, and after move e3, we're playing here the move d4, breaking enter here in the center of the board. Here, Nepo goes with this bishop to b4 idea, wants of course to play bishop to c3 and mess up a little bit the pawn structure, maybe creating a c3, c4, a double pawn structure on the c file. So it's I think a very comfortable idea many times for black. So in the game, queen to c2 was played by Ding Liren. He's protecting this knight and he's controlling also further the e4 square. In some lines we're trying maybe to get the d4 move, then also we are trying to get the pawn on e4. So the queen is supporting the knight on c3, but it's also supporting the e4 square. So in the game, bishop takes c3 played by Nepo. If you play kingside castling immediately, then I think your point to play bishop to b4 early doesn't make sense. Then you will probably meet some ideas of knight to d5, then knight to d5, c takes d5. You have to step back, and now the bishop will be a little bit chased away. We can afterwards also break and enter here. The pawn on e5 is hanging, so already huge positional problems in black's camp. So that's why many times black is simply taking out the knight first. After bishop to c3, we have now b takes c3 by Ding Liren, which creates of course balanced pawn structure, which creates of course a double pawn structure on the c file. But it's a great preparation because notice that white has here many pawns in the center of the board, so we can expect of course the d4 breakthrough, and when that happens white will have a monstrous really great central control with the pawns, although the pawns are a little bit also weak, especially the c4 pawn can be an object of course of black's attack in the continuation of the game. So there are many of course great sides for black here, but also downsides. So in my opinion, you can be the judge of this opening. In my opinion, it's perfectly fine, because especially what Nepo is doing is here perfectly fine in the continuation of the game, because there is a certain rule in chess which says that when you give up a bishop for a knight in an early stage of the game, then you have to protect the squares that your bishop used to attack. So of course we have to protect our dark squares. So you look at this, Nepo is building of course a beautiful grip on dark squares, builds a beautiful pawn chain now in the center of the board. So e4 here played by Ding Liren with the preparation to play the move d4. We have kingside castling, bishop to e2, knight to h5 with the preparation to cement the knight here on f4, and after move d4 that Ding Liren played, Nepo played the quite risky knight to f4 immediately. I have to be honest, I'm not a big fan of this particular line, because Ding is saying, okay, show me what you got. After bishop to f4, e takes f4. Notice that in this scenario, the pawn on the e file gets simply deflected now from the center of the board, and you don't have any more a competition in the center. As we said in the beginning of the video, while white builds this enormous pressure in the center with this pawn storm, with this many pawns in the center of the board, now you are deflecting one of your pawns from the center, which creates of course now even a better situation for white in the center of the board. As I said, it's not a mistake, it's not something that loses the game immediately of course for black, but I'm really not a fan of this line. In my opinion, instead of this move knight to f4, you can play also maybe here queen to f6. I think is perfectly fine. If the knight gets challenged, we can play something like g6, knight to g7 is even a possibility, and still we're competing here in the center of the board, because whatever happens I think is perfectly fine here for black. Knight to e5, knight to e5, and then maybe we can play d takes e5. Still look at this, white would continue here the game with the bad pawn structure. Even if, for instance, white continues with the move d5, then you have always this kind of idea: knight to a5, b6, knight to b7, knight to c5, cementing the knight on a beautiful square. So in my opinion, this was the way to go. This was a much better continuation. But after move knight to f4, Ding is saying, okay, I will take out your powerful knight on f4. After e takes f4, here, as I said, white continues now here with a beautiful central control with this three very mobile pawns with this dynamic pawn structure in the center. So in the game kingside, Carlsen, queen to f6 was played by Jan Nepomniachtchi, trying to get the queen more active, include also the bishop into the game, if possible, maybe include also somehow the knight into the game, maybe knight to e7, knight to g6, knight to h4 are of course opportunities here for black, especially because black has here a pawn majority, has here a 4 versus 3 situation on the king side. So probably black is going to attack the king side with h6, g5, maybe even g4. So black has some opportunities, of course, with this pawn majority. But as I said, with this continuation, e takes f4, you have lost or simply the battle now in the center of the board. So in the game, Ding played rook to e1, supports now the pawn on e4. After rook to e8 by Nepo, bishop to d3, and this was maybe a slightly passive move here by Ding. Bishop to d3, okay, supports your pawn on e4 further. You are trying, of course, to be compact in the center of the board, but maybe a better way to go is simply to play rook from a to d1, getting a new piece into the game. After something like bishop to g4, queen to b1 is always an opportunity. Notice that black has some problems where to go with the light square bishop, because the b file is open. So that's, I think, the issue also in the development of blacks here. After bishop to g4, you have to play maybe even a weird move like b6. And now we challenge h3, bishop to f3, bishop to f3. There are certain threats of e5. The knight is lined up on this diagonal, the rook is lined up on this diagonal. So I think in this scenario, the light square bishop would become a beautiful piece on the board. So really, in my opinion, the first, I'm not saying it's even an inaccuracy or something, but it's really unnecessary. I think normal development is here perfectly fine. You can also play something like, I don't know, you can have also maybe here some opportunities to reroute the knight on d2, but I think you don't have to play with your bishop. This pawn is well protected so far. If necessary, knight to d2, f3 can happen. So in my opinion, so far maybe a necessary line here by Ding Liren. So in the game, bishop to g4. So you see Nepo uses now in this moment. He wants to play bishop takes f3, g takes f3. Then of course the g file would be opened. You would have a further messed up pawn structure. Then of course the knight would come into the game. So already dangerous ideas here by Jan Nepomniachtchi. So that's why Ding gets out of the attack of the bishop. f3 here wasn't played, and it's also not good because here you can play simply bishop h3, kicking away the bishop. After bishop to h3, you have this line, knight to f3, and even if the queen maybe comes here on g6, creating a checkmate threat on g2, you have always this defensive resource, knight to h4, and the queen gets here into the game. But now it's rook to e3. I think this is solid here for white. After queen to h4, rook to h3, and we have now a beautiful position here on this diagonal with the open h file. So again, a good game here for white for sure. So that's why after move knight to d2, Nepo didn't rush with this f3 idea. This f3 can come maybe in a later stage of the game when you prepare it further, but f3 immediately I think would be simply too rush. So that's why Nepo played knight to a5, is trying to get now the knight somehow on a better square. Reroute also play something like b6, and also this move creates an attack against the weak pawn, this double pawn on c4. So now Ding plays his beautiful idea of this particular game. So many of us, I think, would play many different ideas, but here Ding found the beautiful c5. In my opinion, this is a good move. This is a nice progressive move. It's a gambit. It's of course a sacrifice of the pawn, but it creates now further dynamics in the center of the board. As I said in the beginning, in the sequence after e takes f4, Nepo's already pawn got deflected from the center of the board. Now Ding is trying to deflect the other also pawn from the center of the board. Look at this. After d takes c5, Ding has this beautiful tempo against the queen. The queen steps back, and now d5, and we're controlling now the full center now with the d5 and e5 pawn. All of the 4 squares are taken. The queen is a little bit out of game. The knight is also out of game. So in my opinion, it's a great compensation here for the lost pawn. I think you have great spaces, you have great opportunities. We are having here, from White's perspective, more spaces to create with our minor pieces. So it was, in my opinion, a brilliant choice, a spicing up idea here by Liren. That's the thing that we missed, I think, in the first 3 rounds, creating ideas, creating dynamics, creating productive plans, I think, in the middle game stage. Now I think this is the way to go. Of course, the engine, of course, always evaluates the position. Normally, of course, this is still an equal position, but for a human eye, I think I would love now to play the game from White's perspective with this massive pawn center, with these opportunities maybe here on the b file. So every piece now in White's position has its plan, although you're down a pawn. But great idea here by Liren. So rook from a to d8, now c4, simply fixing everything now in the center of the board. b6, here Nepo is searching for opportunities to get the knight back into the game. h3, kicking with the bishop to h5, and now bishop to e4. We have a rook to e7 here played by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He's trying, of course, to get the further attack against the pawn on e5. So far, rook to e5, of course, was not possible. Bishop to h7 would simply win the exchange. So in the game, rook to e7, we have queen to c3, rook to e8, bishop to f3. Good choice again by Liren, because after bishop to f3 we would simply improve our structure. Now knight to f3 or queen to f3 is perfectly fine. Also then afterwards we can play something like a4, but in the next couple of moves we can expect, I think, a beautiful attack against this pawn on f4, and this is the way to go with these 2 centralized pawns that are really bothering black in the continuation of the game. Again, white should be much better. So after move bishop to f3, we have knight to b7, rook to e2. Ding is controlling further his pawn on e5. We have now the move f6, and now e6. And now comes a brilliant move here by Nepo, knight to d6. He found really great defensive resource, because what he gained here is a pawn immobility. So when you face this kind of a structure, you see when we have this dynamic pawn structure that we don't want to tolerate, then it's simply time to block it somehow, make it immobile. So still these pawns are mobile with e6 and d6. With this idea f6 and e6, knight to d6, here Nepo created a beautiful blockade. Look how this knight fits really beautifully onto the square d6, like in the game Tetris, when you simply wait for a single piece that simply fits in the perfect position. Now the knight creates the perfect blockade here on d6, and now look at this. Black has also some chances, maybe with this progressive idea, with this kingside pawn majority attack, with this 4 versus 3 situation here on the kingside. I think black would have at least some kind of a chance here. So in the game, rook from a to e1, supporting simply further the pawn chain by the rook, perfectly fine. And now Nepo plays his maybe even first really inaccurate move here, knight to f5. He's trying to get the knight on d4, which really makes sense. But this is already bad, because look at this. First of all, what you should do is get the bishop back in here on g6, competing here on the square e4. This is very important, because now after something like rook from e to a1, of course there are some opportunities maybe by white to push the pawn on a4, a5, breaking even here the pawn chain on the queen side. Now after something like queen to g5, look at this, knight to a5 can create this blockade, and white cannot get through here on the queen side. You can place maybe rook to e1 again, but now after queen to h6, bishop to g4, king to f8, you can play many things, but the blockade should stay. I think you built this blockade on d6 and you should keep the blockade. But in the game after knight to f5, Nepo is announcing already a more active game. He's trying to counterplay here. He's trying to even win the game, and that's the Nepo that we love, of course. Nepo never is settling down for a draw immediately, so he's trying to find new opportunities. But in my opinion, the knight should have simply stayed on this beautiful square d6, where it created this really nice blockade. So in the game, bishop to h5. So Ding simplifies the game, queen to h5, and notices now that the pawn on f4 is weak. So as I said, knight to d6 should simply stay here, because then rook to e4 would never be a possibility. The rook would never attack the pawn on f4. In the game, we have queen to h6, protecting now the pawn, queen to f3. You see, Ding finds a beautiful attacking maneuver. He's finding at least a weakness in the position, which is of course the weak pawn on f4. Now Nepo gets the knight on d4. It seems so that white needs now to retreat, but that was simply Ding's beautiful idea. Ding sacks the rook for the knight. Incredible tactical shot. Simply gets rid of this annoying piece after c takes d4, knight to b3, and look at this. The knight is coming here on d4. The knight is coming here on f5. So from this point on, the game is simply a one-way ticket here in white's favor. Ding played the optimal exchange sacrifice, a brutal tactical shot in the round 4 of the World Chess Championship match. That's the Ding that we have been waiting for. Really wild stuff. So here g5 was played by Nepo. Another bad move, maybe the way to go, but still it's a bad position for black. D3, trying maybe somehow to deflect the queen from the attack of the pawn on f4. Now maybe something like knight to d6, d4 can be played, but now we play d2, rook to d1, and now with g6 you're controlling further the f5 score, but still after a couple moves, this pawn will be taken. This pawn is weak. You can never protect it with the pawn because then the knight on f5 is coming. Still, these three pawns are rolling here on in the center of the board, so it's still a messed up game here for Jan Nepomniachtchi. After knight to b3, g5, knight to d4, getting the knight, of course, on this beautiful score f5. Nepo prevents this idea with the move queen to g6. We have g4 again with the idea to hop with the knight on f5. Nepo takes en passant. F takes g3, f takes g3, h5, and now the knight comes on a beautiful square, on the optimal square again on f5. The rook has to step back here on h7, queen to e4, and now the problem here is I think that we want to simply get rid of the pawn on c7. When that happens, somehow maybe even sacrificing some lines, the knight for the pawn, and then create two connected pass pawns on the 6th rank. When that happens, I think the game is over. So this is one of the cool tactical ideas that comes to my mind when I watch now this particular endgame. After queen to e4, king to h8, e7, good choice here by Liren. He's trying to get the queen more active here on e6. We have queen to f7, now d6. Again, a beautiful move here by Ding. C takes d6, knight to d6 with a fork against the queen and the rook. The queen has to step back. Knight to e8, queen to e8, and now the queen is coming here on a beautiful active square on e6. And basically the whole position here by black is paralyzed. The queen is active. This pawn is weak. Basically what Nepo is doing here, he's just playing the only moves that are prolonging the game. He plays now king to g7, we have a rook to f1, rook to h6, and now rook to d1. This was now the beautiful idea here by Ding, because he's trying now the very active idea, rook to d8, and the game should be over. The only move that survives here for black is maybe to play the move f5, somehow competing against this very enormous pressure here that they created now on the d file, but also here on the e file. So after rook to d1, here Nepo went with this idea f5, but after queen to e5, we have this enormous pressure again. King to f7 had to be played, but now Ding picks up another pawn. You cannot, of course, take with the king. You get rook to e1, and then you get destroyed on the e file. So that's why here Ding got challenged with this idea, rook to f6. But now again a beautiful check. You have to step back, rook king to e6. Now the queen is coming again into the game. We are threatening again the move rook to e1. Again, you cannot pick up the pawn on e7. Rook to g6 was played here by Jan Nepomniachtchi, and after queen to f8, in this position Nepo resigned. Really wild stuff. Incredible game here by Ding. A perfect attack in the English opening. First of all, sacrificing one pawn, creating this dynamic in the center of the board, then sacrificing the rook for the exchange, creating really a wild pawn storm in the center of the board, getting the queen active, getting the rook active, creating pawn breakthrough ideas. This is the way to go. This is with the Ding that we know. So it's now a beautiful result, I think, for neutral chess lovers, because they're of course fans of Jan Nepomniachtchi, they're of course fans of Ding Liren, but for the neutral viewer, I think this is an optimal result. Now Nepo will not take this World Championship match very easily. You see, Ding can play chess. Everyone said Ding doesn't have any more chances in the game, but look at this, how Ding can play. So it will be now really an epic World Chess Championship match for us to follow in the continuation of this beautiful event. So What to say? Incredible game. So the result is now 2 points for Liren and 2 points for Nepomniachtchi. In the next round, Nepo is again playing with the white pieces, so we can expect new chess drama. So of course I will cover it, so pay good attention. This will be one of the best chess events for sure. So okay, what to say? If you want to see our coverage of the previous games, check out our previous analyzed games. Here's the link of our World Chess Championship match between Nepo and Ding. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.